tell me side to side, you can say, JC, you're too much for me. I am a little bit of loneliness, a little bit of disregard, handful of complaints, but I can't help the fact that everyone can see these scars. I am what I want you to want, what I want you to feel, and it's like no matter what I do, I can't convince you to just believe this is real. So let go, watching you turn your back, you always do. Face away and pretend that I'm not. I'll be here 'cause you're all that I got.
And we're back again. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Top Table Talk. We've got a different kind of panel tonight. We've got lots to talk about, lots to discuss. A very interesting game week 5. But first of all, how are we? How's things?
All good, boys. All good.
All good, man.
Considering. We'll definitely get into that, boys, and have a chat about things. But first of all, we'll talk about our sponsor. We'll get our sponsors promo out the way.
Yeah, so if you haven't been listening to us last little while, we're in partnership with Football Prizes, and this promotion continues. It's actually 10 days left now to get in. It closes on the 3rd of October, Friday the 3rd of October at 7:30, and that's when the draw happens. But yeah, you've heard us talking about jerseys, signed jerseys, cash prizes of a 1K. There's even a signed Bruno jersey with a TV built into it. But how do you do it? Well, there's a little video that tells you a bit more about that. Probably could do it talking over that as well as all the little dings and bells and whistles there. But use the code loaded10 and the link in the chat and in the show description, and it'll take you into it. And away you go. There's still plenty of tickets and plenty of instant prizes there for your up for grabs.
But they're going quickly, and we can see them dropping like flies every day. So make sure you get involved on that one for sure. Boys, it's a pleasure to have you on again. Great panel tonight of different perspective. Great to welcome back Billy. Great to welcome back Adam onto the panel. Of course, Rich is in the panel tonight. And look, it's where we wanted to start anyway, because there has been obviously some news in the last 24 hours with Monchi, if I'm pronouncing that right, sporting director Aston Villa, leaving with immediate effect, and it looks like your replacement is coming in very, very quickly from Real Sociedad. Now, boys, obviously we've talked about it separately on various channels, but in particular on Top Table Talk about Villa's start to the season. I just wanted to get your perspective on it, because there's been a lot of talk around Villa fans at this moment in time after this news broke last night. A little bit worried about what this might mean for Aston Villa and a certain manager at your club. Like, how do you see this movement in the last 24 hours? Like, Rich, I'll start with you, and then Billy, feel free to jump in.
Well, to be fair, last night when the news broke, I was quite concerned about the direction of the club, and that kind of snowball effect of what might happen.
Yeah.
Having heard the news now in terms of this guy from Real Sociedad coming in and his links to Unai Emery and how close he is to Unai Emery, that seems like a more of a strategic decision, and it seems more of a personal decision on Monchi's part. That's what they're trying to say. I mean, I would debate that, but that's what they're saying. So in that sense, it seems more of a controlled situation and a strategic situation that they've gone and got this guy quickly, and he's close to Emery, and that I think maybe even a closer ally than Monchi was. In terms of Monchi's job, it's mixed. You know, at first I could see a strategy of what he was trying to do in terms of signing highly rated young players from across Europe, from sort of 16 to 19 age groups, and then rough diamonds that Unai Emery could sort of polish, and then maybe the odd player that would challenge for the first team. But it just got more and more muddled and more just messy as the years went on. You know, signing loan players with the likes of Rashford and Asensio, which were good signs at the time, but really expensive. I could understand the gamble, don't get me wrong. And then you had this summer where it was, is Martinez leaving? Is Ollie Watkins leaving? Is this player leaving? Then it ends up being Ramsey leaving, but you're bringing in players on higher wages than Ramsey that are arguably not as good. It just seemed a complete mess. So I'm not sorry to see him go. But also my arguments are, at the minute, I'm looking at the manager as well as like what he's doing. I'm not happy with what the manager's doing at the moment as well as the players. So you can change the director of football all you like, but that doesn't affect passing the ball to a teammate or running around and putting 100% effort in on the pitch. And at the moment, the players and the manager need to look at themselves, because I'm telling you what, if we don't win the next two games, he's under pressure. I'm telling you that now. I was in the away end on Sunday, and there was some not very happy supporters in there, and me included. So I'm not happy with him at the minute at all.
Interesting perspective. Always get that from you, Rich. Billy, your perspective on things. Obviously, you've heard from what Rich said, heard from the perspective of some of the fans in the away end at the game on Sunday at the stadium of. I'll stop there. But Billy, what's your perspective on it all? Because I know we were kind of chatting a little bit last night when it sort of broke, but obviously now you've had a little bit of time to sort of let it sink in, a bit like Rich. Like, where's your head at with it all?
Yeah, when it first came out, my immediate thought was, what does this mean for Emery? Because for me, Emery is everything at the moment for Aston Villa. I think the owners have come out and said previously that they see Unai Emery as our version of Sir Alex Ferguson and that dynasty that he had at Man United and the longevity that he had at Man United. So I thought it would really surprise me if this is the owners going, Monchi, get out, and Emery's turned around going like, hang on, what are you doing here with my director of football kind of thing? As it happens, I think it's probably been in the pipeline for a little while. Guillaume Balaguer's written a piece in his brand new book about our new sporting director and Emery's relationship with him as well. So clearly it's been something that's been on the mind, and certainly in the pipeline for quite a while at least. And I think it's just a case of Emery and Monchi not really seeing eye to eye anymore. I think Emery wants to win and wants players that are ready to win and do things now, whereas Monchi is very much that project, kind of bring younger players in, nurture them, and possibly sell them on for profit and build them up. Whereas Emery wants players that are ready to go now, ready to win now. And I can understand both sides of it. But at the end of the day, you need two people that are on the exact same page if you want to go anywhere. And so Monchi leaving, look, I'm grateful for what Monchi's done. Of course, he's turned us into, along with Emery and Vida Gang as well, he's turned us into an elite club again. I know we've not started this season as one, but we are, I would say, more or less, certainly in the European places anyway. And so I'm grateful for what Monchi's done, but we need everyone to be on the same page, on the same wavelength. So if Monchi wasn't on the same wavelength as Emery, then so be it. He leaves. Let's go into a new direction under a new management and new direction, and see where that takes us. In terms of Emery this season, I think he's got more than enough credit in the bank for me to keep hold of him for a good while yet. I can understand what Rich is saying. If performances and results don't turn around, then obviously a lot of pressure seems to will be put on Emery. But I'm confident in a way that Emery will be able to turn it round, and we'll get points, and we'll get wins on the board, and we'll start scoring goals. Yeah. Of course, the start of the season hasn't been ideal, far from it, but I think we've got a squad there. And as soon as we get players like Tielemans back, as soon as we get players like Onana back, we've then got our solid midfield. Harvey Elliott settles in a little bit. Sancho came on at the weekend, and along with Maatsen, looked really good down that left-hand side. And if Watkins could have finished his dinner, then we go on and win that game, and we're having a different conversation now, probably. So it's one of them. I'm confident that we'll turn it around. We're certainly not going to be in a relegation battle, and but yeah, we just need to focus on getting 3 points and focus on Bologna on Thursday, and hopefully win that game and take some momentum into the weekend with that.
Boys, I'll open it up to the wider panel. So Adam, Chris, Daz, just your thoughts on the whole situation with Villa from an outside perspective, because I'm not going to lie, when I read that last night, I think I dropped it into our chat, I dropped it into the 12-man chat as well. I was thinking, wow, like what is going on at Aston Villa? I thought things were crumbling. That was kind of my initial thoughts. But Adam, what is your perspective on just Villa in general, but obviously on the big news that's come out today? Because I think his name's Roberto. Is it Roberto Oleb? Who's looking like
something like that. I don't know how to pronounce it yet, to be honest with you.
But, obviously, Monchi is left with immediate effect. Roberto Oleb from Real Sociedad got a good grounding as a sort of sporting director, is coming in. What do you make of that Aston Villa,
Adam? I really want someone to explain to me how you've managed to start this season in the way you have. Like, I genuinely don't understand it, because
I don't think any of us do, mate. That's half the problem.
It's like fascinating, especially when I feel like a year ago, give or take this time a year ago, we might have been having a conversation on this same show talking about what managers might Newcastle potentially, want to take from other teams. And Emery was one of those names. Would you make that trade now? I wonder. So I don't know, because Emery's had a pretty strong career. He's broadly regarded as an excellent manager. It didn't go well at Arsenal, but it really does for many people. So you start to go, okay, well, is it the manager's fault? Probably not. Is it the players' fault? Well, you've got plenty of players that are good enough to beat a 10-man Sunderland team. What I don't understand what the issue is. Did these players suddenly just become terrible over the summer break? Like, what? I wish I had something intelligent to say about it. I'm just watching alongside and just going, what is this team doing? I feel like the Martinez thing sums it up, Rich, as well, don't you? I feel like he spent most of the summer window trying to leave the team. Didn't leave. Then they just threw him straight back into it. Is there a lack of authority or control that's happened, or?
It's just a bit of a mess. And can you hear me still?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a bit of a mess. You've had, like I said, you had this situation where Watkins could be leaving, Martinez could be leaving, Rodgers could have even been leaving. We've had struggled to get players in, and then like you said, they've all of a sudden stayed. But there's other players that have then gone, like Jacob Ramsey and one or two, and Leon Bailey, and then you've kind of replaced them with Harvey Elliott and Jadon Sancho. And with all due respect, Elliott's a very skillful player, but they're not players that, in my opinion, were what we needed. They're not the type of player that we needed. Like, in my opinion, we needed pace in behind. We needed someone up top who was a different alternative to Ollie Watkins. We needed a right back, and we needed cover at centre back. And like, you look at the team at the minute, and I know it keeps getting mentioned, and I mentioned this about a month ago, so kind of everyone's jumping on it now. But the team's Dean Smith players, Steve Bruce players, Steven Gerrard players, and you've got 2 Unai Emery players. So what's going on? Like that's to me what I don't understand what's going on. And as I say, in terms of the players, you mentioned about what they're doing or what they're not doing. My opinion is they're phoning in their performances. My opinion is they're clocking in, clocking out. They're not doing anything extra. They're not.
But why would they do that? But,
I think there's a feeling that they there's a few of them that wanted to leave and for whatever reason couldn't, and then there's a few of them that are pissed off about Jacob Ramsey leaving and players coming in. Their perception is that the players that have come in on higher wages than what Jacob Ramsey is on are better than are worse than what we've let go. So their opinion is we've let Bailey go. We've let Ramsey go. We've brought in Daniel Marlon on more money. We've brought in Jadon Sancho on more money, and they're not as good as what we've let go. So in their mind, they're thinking, well, hang on a minute, this doesn't make sense to me. Why are we getting rid of players on less wages and bringing in players on higher wages, and they're not as good? And then you've got a couple of players who've taken pay cuts. So that's always a difficult one for me. It's fair enough. It's noble on the players' perspective to do that. But then you're almost in a situation where the player's doing the club a favour, and you don't want to be like that. You don't want to have players feeling entitled to kind of be holding the club to ransom almost. Well, I've done you a favour, blah, blah, blah. And then there might have been other players that had also agreed to do something like that, or it was also incumbent of them in their perception to do something like that, and they haven't done it. So that could be a little bit of dissatisfaction in the dressing room there. And then you go to the tactics. I mean, I'm not seeing anything in the performances right now. I could see in the performances that, you know what, we're creating chances, we're just unlucky, we're doing this. We've had 10 shots in 5 games. Like, what makes people think that we're going to beat Fulham on Sunday, and what makes people think we're going to beat Burnley? There's nothing that indicates. All we're doing is talking about probabilities. Oh, well, we've played 6 games, so at some point we're going to get a win. That's the only thing that we can cling on to as to whether Aston Villa are going to get a win on Sunday. Just blind faith. Nothing in the performances from any players suggesting that we are going to go at home to Fulham and beat them on Sunday. And like I say, I'm concerned at the minute. I'm really concerned at the minute. I do think Unai's got credit in the bank, but that credit, if we're in a bad position at Christmas, that credit does not last very long.
And you've got the danger as well, Rich, haven't you? Where you look back in recent seasons, everyone would say when you're playing Aston Villa, oh, tough game, and how quickly those tables can turn. Because we all know ourselves, whenever we come up against a Man United or a Chelsea, you don't look at Man United and Chelsea from the 90s or the early 2000s where you go, wow, it's Man United, Chelsea. It's almost like, might get something here, might get something. And you don't want that reputation to kind of change of Aston Villa because, us as Newcastle fans, whenever we're playing against Aston Villa, you think, in for a tough game today. It's going to be a tough one. It could go either way.
Unless it's at St James's Park.
Unless it's yeah. But it's scary how things can change quickly.
But if you look at the game on Sunday, I don't know if you boys watched it, but when Sunderland went down to 10 men, if you just turn the game on at that point, you wouldn't. It would be Villa that you would think had the 10 men, not Sunderland. Like Villa were awful, and Sunderland deserved to win that game, no doubt about it.
You look at Villa right now, and we at the time were like, it's a good point at Villa Park because it's a ground that we don't normally get things from. But we're looking back at that fixture now and we're thinking, like, we'd love to play that fixture again, seeing how you're playing now. Or, like, we're thinking, flipping out, that looks like 2 points dropped. But because of how you started that season, we've never felt like that about Villa. Certainly not in the last 2 or 3 years. And that's a really important point, is the way Villa are being looked at now. And I think you're right. Like, you look at the next 2 games. What is it? Fulham and Burnley, did you say?
Fulham and Burnley with Bologna and Feyenoord sort of in the Europa League. So three home games out of 4. So there is an opportunity there to build a bit of confidence. But as I say, I'm clutching at straws. Villa fans would have to be honest and say they're kind of clutching at straws at the minute as to what is going to be the indication that they're going to turn around the form. I mean, you had Emery the other day criticising Harvey Elliott for trying to play the ball too quickly and trying to play through balls. I'm like, mate, we're literally falling asleep watching this team at the moment. Someone's coming on and trying to do something.
I actually agreed with him on that point, though. To be honest with you, because he
needed someone to do something.
No, but when Harvey Elliott came on, though, he just looked he was positive, he was quick, and that's obviously a good thing. But I think he was too eager to make things happen. I think if he'd have just taken an extra half a second on the ball from time to time, things would have opened up a little bit better for him. That was my opinion on it, at least.
Brighton wanted Harvey Elliott, so thanks for taking him and ruining him.
Yeah. No, he was a bright spot. Him and Sancho were fairly bright spots, yeah. But again,
they need to be playing though. They need to be starting from the front. They need to be starting from the beginning, even.
Yeah, I just want to see Villa player try and beat a man. Like I want to see a Villa player actually run at someone at full speed and try and take it round them. You know, you look at like with Newcastle with Murphy and Harvey Barnes and Anthony Gordon, like they very rarely, when they're at full flight, they very rarely stop and then face up their man and then try and take it round them again. They'll just go like, because you don't need a skill if you're running fast. You just go past them. Whereas the Villa players, they get to the man and then they stop and then they'll like try and do a few step overs or try and do something and inevitably they'll lose the ball. Like you meant. When you're coaching kids, you tell them, get to full speed and run past the man. Like, we're just standing still. No wonder Elliott couldn't pass to anyone because there was no one moving.
Well, isn't that Emery? Isn't that Emery's instructions?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So that's why I'm like the Villa fan base in the away end was getting extremely frustrated with the lack of movement, tempo, urgency, quality. And as I said, every time Sunderland got the ball, and this is the same case as every single game we've played this season, we've looked slow and pedestrian. And when the other team get the ball, within 2 passes, they're on our defence, they're putting us under pressure, and we're like, what is going on? What is going on? And as I say, this will not last long if he doesn't sort it out.
We're only talking about Emery last week, Rich, and kind of, I suppose, bigging him up, but things he didn't look right. This is like a vote of confidence, though, from Villa in backing Emery here and bringing in the man that he wants. Something that I think we've kind of learned from him as well, with having 2 sporting directors that hasn't worked out. The next sporting director should be Eddie Howe's pick, because it's someone Eddie Howe can and will work with. Otherwise, we're going to be looking for one again in a year's time. So they're putting all their eggs in the Emery basket, and look, he deserves a chance. He's been brilliant for you the last 2 seasons.
Yeah,
so.
and this is the thing. Maybe if some of the players are a little bit annoyed or pissed off or whatever, maybe this decision, this backing, will nip it in the bud and say, look, you either like it or lump it. Unai Emery is here, and that's that. So maybe that will turn it around. Sorry, I'm hogging the mic here. Let Billy jump in.
Do you know what, Rich? I just wanted to ask you and Billy, really. When did Monchi come in?
2 years ago.
It was the summer, I think, wasn't it?
June 23.
Yeah.
No, because I only ask because I just wonder whether there's more at play. I mean, and I come up with me conspiracy theories, having been a Newcastle fan and seeing all the shenanigans that goes on at our club. You just wonder, don't you? Because I found it interesting, Rich. You said a few weeks ago when you were on the show, that Unai Emery signings, the players that are coming in, they're not getting into the start 11, and you're seeing, the Gerrard signings, you're seeing all the previous manager signings, and then now. You've just mentioned, I hadn't seen that Unai Emery's come out and said about Harvey Elliott. And you just wonder whether is this some kind of power play where, it's like, oh, it must be Monchi. That means we need a new director coming in, because the reason that, Emery's not getting the players that he wants, because I know that the players that have come in, they will be seen as Emery signings, but you wonder what goes on behind the scenes and whether Monchi's saying, yeah, actually, you're getting him, he's coming in. And Emery's maybe going, I don't want these players. And then is Emery maybe making that very clear on the training pitch? Is Emery, not... I'm not saying that he's putting it down on the mood or anything like that, but is that where all the unrest and all the discontent's coming from? Because if he's happy to come out and say about Harvey Elliott, who's trying to show a little bit of enthusiasm, but maybe he's going, that's not how I want to play. That's not how I want to do things. And it's rubbing off on all the rest of the squad, and they're all going, this is...
It was... I saw something today saying that Lucas Paqueta was Emery's choice and Harvey Elliott was Monchi's choice. So, and that would tie in with what I said earlier about Unai Emery wanting players ready for the here and now and Monchi wanting players for the future. Now, I think Harvey Elliott is a fantastic signing no matter what. And I think eventually Emery will be able to get the best out of him. And he just needs to settle down, work together and come to a... Just work together to get the best out of him, like we've seen Emery do over the years with other players. But I think Emery wanting a player like Paqueta, who's ready for the here and now, ready for to push on his career and start winning things. He's a ready-made Premier League proven player, and so I don't think for a second Emery's going to go, I don't want to work with Harvey Elliott. Obviously, with what you're saying, but it would ring true that there's been a slight disagreement in proceedings there, if you know what I mean. And yeah, there's obviously been disagreements behind the scenes, and that's why we needed the change, because obviously the players that Emery wanted aren't the ones necessarily coming in.
And this is the difficulty for managers, because Premier League managers, they're on Premier League managers are on they're on a short life, aren't they? Because all it takes is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games. And if they, like as Villa are showing at the moment, people are already talking about Emery. If you just said at the start of the season, oh, is Unai Emery going to lose his job? Everyone would go, are you mad? Like, of course he's not. He's probably one of the safest managers out there. So they know that they're on short supply. And this is what we've spoken about, us Newcastle fans. Sometimes we get frustrated, because we hear that Eddie Howe wants his tried and tested players. He wants Premier League experience, players who hit the ground running. But from a manager's point of view, that is what you want, isn't it? Because you don't, as much as you want to bring in these youngsters or these, talents from abroad, there's so many different variables, and sometimes managers don't have that time.
And especially where we both are as clubs as well. Like we need players that are gonna come in, immediately hit the ground running to push us on immediately to get us that Champions League football that we both crave and we both need for the financial reasons as well. Exactly. So it makes perfect sense as to why Emery feels this way as well. Once we've got that Champions League and we solidify ourselves as Champions League regulars, that's when you can maybe start to change and say, we'll start picking up a few youngsters that we can nurture into Champions League players. But for the here and now, when you need to hit the ground running, you need results, you need players that are going to immediately elevate your level. So I've got to shoot, boys, but just quickly, Chris, you mentioned Monchi and Emery's relationship. Monchi wasn't Emery's first choice either.
No.
It was, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but it was the former Barcelona.
Alemany.
That's it, yeah. Aleman, yeah. From Barcelona, so.
Well, just push, expand. I've got to shoot in a bit, but just expanding on Billy's point there. I mean, he said about the players that Unai Emery had sort of identified. I think there were 60 players that he'd identified. And then you factor in the PSR and the SCR kind of complications. But there's absolutely no way that Unai Emery would have had Victor Lindelof, with all due respect, at the top of his list when he had all the centre-backs to choose from. So, you get the feeling that there was probably quite a few phone calls where, there was one player offered to him, maybe John Lukumi, It was like, no, sorry, we can't get him. Then there was Gertruda, no, sorry, we can't get him. And then he maybe phoned him up and said, oh, I've got you a great player. I've got you Victor Lindelof. Like, there's probably been a bit of that in
That's
terms
like
of
Disassi in January, though, Rich. The Disassi was absolutely Axel Disassi in January. So like, it was exactly the same situation. It looked very much like a panic buy. Like I think you touched on there was an injury in January, and then you had to go and sign him.
There was two, yeah.
So it just feels like the same. It just feels like the rejection. But the one thing I was
massive. And then also just finishing up, we've played, and I've made this point. I don't know if you've watched any of my rants that I've had the last couple of games, but I made this point that we've had 5. If you ask the Villa fans at the start of the season what the dream start would have been, we'd have said this is the dream start. Newcastle at home, Brentford away with all their problems, Crystal Palace at home. Yes, that's a tough game, in terms of a bogey side. But then you've got Everton away, you've got Sunderland away, you've got Fulham at home, and then Burnley at home. You've got none of last year's top 4. Sorry, putting you.
Careful, mate. Careful. Careful.
You've got none of last season's
That's the
top
first
4.
peak. That's the first peak.
You've got no Man United away. You've got no Tottenham away. So and then look at the start. We've had 3 points. The most we can get is 9 points from 7 games. So you're automatically playing catch up. And then you've got to play Liverpool, Spurs, Chelsea, Arsenal. So at the moment, fair enough, we might be able to turn it around. But as I said before, nothing is indicating to me that it can turn around in terms of the way that we're playing. And I don't know, man. I think when we come up against those teams, maybe it's a case of we need to get a result and come up against one of those teams to kind of kickstart us into life. But it's a tough ask, because Villa fans would have been dreaming of this start to the season in terms of fixtures, and to only potentially have a maximum of being able to achieve 9 points is way behind what we'd have expected to be on.
Yeah. Thing is, as well, we played Newcastle without Isak. We played Brentford without Mbuemo and Wissa.
That's big number 2.
No. Sorry.
Newcastle without Isak is just Newcastle, Billy. So I don't know. You can't really say that.
Yeah, but at the time there was a lot going on. Yeah. But we played Brentford without Wissa and Mbuemo. We played Palace without Eze, and we didn't get any wins, no goals, we got a couple of points, but. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. But
shall we start the season again?
I've got confidence.
Yeah, start again.
Yes, yeah. I've got confidence that we'll turn it round anyway. We'll be all right. My main focus, at least, is just get into that Bologna game, come away with 3 points from there, and use that as momentum to then go into the weekend. So,
do you guys think that? And I know some of you got to run, but do you think the European competition is going to be a blessing or a curse for you? Like, is it going to make it seem like it's another game where we can screw up and not get going here? It's more games. We don't necessarily have the squad we want. Would you rather not have that at the moment, or do you think it's a reprieve?
I honestly think it can be a good thing for us because like I mentioned, you use that game against Bologna. It's a team outside of the Premier League, focusing on different kind of things. It's an opportunity to get 3 points against them, and like I say, use that momentum going into the weekend.
What's your answer if you lose that game against Bologna? How are you feeling about it then?
I was going to say, it's if you win, isn't it?
Yeah.
Then what?
Then I'd still be very concerned, and again the misery continues. But I suppose ask Spurs fans. Ask Spurs fans.
You know what the worst result would probably be in that game? A draw. Because if we lose,
draw.
yeah. If we lose, it can be like, right, they have to put in a performance on Sunday. They have to answer it, and if they win, it's like, right, that's great confidence going into the next game. If they draw, it's like, again. And as Billy said, if it's a 0-0 draw, it's like, well, they haven't learned anything from what we've kind of reacted to this week. So,
Rich,
Yeah, man.
just a quick one before I shoot. Would you take a Spurs-like season from last season? Because honestly, I said this on the 12th Man last night. I'd snap your hands off for it. I really would.
And you lose Emery at the end of it.
No, no. We're not talking about managers and things like that.
You can't pick and choose bits of it.
We're
You have to play Wolfie in the final.
Results.
Forest in the final. There you go.
If it means we come away from that, I'll snap your hands off even more.
Yeah, if it meant playing Forest in the final and beating them, yeah, I'd probably take it. But I don't know if I could lose. How many games did Tottenham lose last season in the Premier League?
It's about 22 or something.
I could not take that. I couldn't take losing 22 games in the season.
But they were comfortably safe, weren't they? They were never going to go down. They were comfortably safe.
Different kettle of fish this season, isn't it? I mean, you look at the three teams that have come up, and they look stronger. They look way better.
They do, to be fair. They do.
For now.
Yeah,
but Wolves look bad enough to be like a promoted team. So
but just wait until we play them. Wait until we play them.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, especially at Molyneux, Wolves don't really turn up against you boys, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's their cup final. That's the only fixture they look forward to all season.
Number one.
I don't think.
Right, boys, I've got to go before it's too late. Take care. Thanks for having me on.
Take care, Bill.
All the best, boys.
Oh man! Just before you go, I just wanted to throw this up to you, Rich. So I saw this on Sky today, and it was Monchi's ins and outs. Now, I got pelted last night from a small section. A few agreed actually about potentially taking Monchi at Newcastle. We're looking at sporting director. We're not going to get him because Ross Wilson is likely and the front runner for the sporting director's position. But you look at they're not all of them, but some of the ins and outs. I do believe that Tielemans was during his watch or part of his watch, maybe. I'm not quite sure on that one, but he's not on the list. But these are all money signings, ins and outs. Now, there was a lot of Villa fans and a lot of Newcastle fans saying that Monchi was shit. It was rubbish. He wasn't very good. He didn't do a good job. But I'm looking at some of the sales that he's made, and I'm thinking there's a lot of big money there that he's drawn in, and maybe people are just looking at the signings. But what did you make of it overall? Because obviously there's a few signings in there, one or two that we were after, that you managed to pick up. But like, what do you think of that overall, mate?
Like I said at the start, I think you could clearly see the strategy and the vision in the early days with regards to the three. He had kind of three strands. He had signing the young hot property across Europe, sort of between the 16 and 20 years old age group. Some of them having first team experience and being able to snap them up at a reasonable price. I imagine with the view to then either loaning them out or getting some first team experience to then be able to sell them on for money. You also had the situation of, potentially buying, the likes of a Morgan Rogers or a Donyell Marlon, for example, who's got a bit of a rough diamond, maybe not quite falling in favour with the current club, who maybe Unai Emery could get something out of that maybe fitted a specific type of skill set that Unai Emery required. And then you also then had, the odd big signing like an Amadou Onana or a Pau Torres or something like that was going to come in and hit the first team. I think where it's got muddled is where I was saying to Chris before is because we've maybe had to chase certain things or certain players haven't maybe adapted to the system as well as Unai wanted to, or there's been injury or whatever. We've had to then resort to signing players on loan, because I think I remember Emery saying that he never really wanted to do the loan signings anymore after he got Longley and Zaniolo in that one season. He didn't want to do it again, but he obviously was forced to, or the strategy was changed a bit to get Rashford and Asensio in, to kickstart that part of the season. And then that's kind of maybe unravelled a bit into this summer with potentially needing to sell more players or having to balance the books here or there, and then we've led to these kind of maybe potentially panic signings at the back end of the window. So I think the initial strategy was brilliant, but it's kind of unravelled a bit. You're looking at those signings, though. Some of them have been good. Some of the dealings have been good in terms of selling players on for profit. But there's been also some bizarre ones, signing players like Ozcan and Nedeljkovic and then loaning them out for the same money, like loaning them out and then with sell to buy options with the same money that we paid for them. So that kind of defeats the object of what we were trying to do. So look, you're never going to get every signing right, but there has been some successes, and you have to credit him for providing the players that have got Unai to the Champions League and Europe multiple seasons. But it's going to be interesting to see what this new director of football can do in January, because I don't know how much money we're going to have. What are we going to have to spend in January if the rulings are so stringent? So it's going to be really interesting to see what this guy can do if his hands are tied and what he can bring through. I'd like us to play some more of our younger players. The under-18s last season won everything in the Premier League, the under-18s league. They beat Man City, that everyone vaunts about how their academy is so amazing. So I'd like to see some of them given more of a shot. So that would be good to see if we could do something like that. But yeah, Monchi as a whole, I'd say pretty good, but lost it towards the back end. And it's going to be interesting to see what this new guy can do.
Rich, I remember you saying on a previous show, that you weren't wedded to certain players, and you were happy for players to leave, and if so be the case. But do you see a possibility where, and I'm asking this because we've obviously experienced the same thing with Alexander Isak. Do you see a future where a few people in the chat are mentioning there you bought Morgan Rogers for like 9 million, and you could technically be looking at 80-90 plus million for Morgan Rogers. Do you see a possibility where the club decide to cash in on Morgan Rogers just so that you can almost have like a little mini rebuild? And would you be open to that? Given that he's not. Well, so far this season, not that many players have, but he's not maybe showing the form that he has previously.
At the minute, I don't think we get 20 quid for Morgan Rogers, let alone 80 million. But I was saying throughout the summer, the one player that would get us money in to be able to reinvest in multiple positions if we sold him is Morgan Rogers. Like, people were talking about selling Watkins or selling Martinez, but you've got to get a goalkeeper of equal or slightly less price. So that doesn't mean you can't then reinvest more money into a different position. The same with the striker. If you got 60 million for Ollie Watkins, you might be able to get someone for 40 million, but it doesn't leave you a lot to then reinvest in another position. Whereas Morgan Rogers, you sign him for 10, 11 million, and then you're selling him for 80 to 90 million. That gives you a lot of wriggle room to then reinvest into other positions to potentially improve them. And look, Rogers has got so many qualities, but he also has so many frustrations and errors in his game in terms of game awareness, in terms of decision making, in terms of control, first touch. So he's got a lot of areas that he needs to improve in his game, and we're seeing that right now. But hopefully, he can turn it around, because I would be prepared to let him go at the end of the season if it meant we could reinvest. As I said before, I don't really hold a candle to any player that we have. If Boubacar Kamara, if we signed him on a free, if we got 50, 60 million offer for him, I'd say, yeah, mate, see you later. There's better players, or there's different ways you can target different positions. No player to me is indispensable. As you guys should know, you've moved on from Isak now. It was bad at the time, the way it happened, but the club survives. You put yourself in a great position to be, if you're there or thereabouts in January, still in and around the Champions League, you can go and reinvest again. You can go and put more money down, and that puts you in a great position after selling that player.
Rich, I've learnt from you over this last year with your kind of stance on players. After experiencing that Isaac situation, I'll never do that again. I'll never wed myself to a player again, and I think I've learnt that from you. And I was thinking about that over the summer.
Pete, what about Botman?
Not back. Even look, I'd love Botman to stay, but like in terms of being wedded to the point where I'm like that feeling that I had when he didn't get on the plane to the training camp in South Korea. That feeling of knowing at that point that he's going to leave, that was horrible. Because I absolutely loved Alexander Isak as a player at Newcastle United. I love a lot of our players, but he was the superstar. And the feeling I had, and I felt that day when that happened, I said to myself, I'm never doing that again. I'm never wedding myself to a player in that moment like that again. I can still love a player, like I love Sven Botman, always have, always will, regardless of whether he stays at the club or goes. But I won't wed myself to him. If he has to leave, he leaves. That's fine. Finale, the same. I'd be gutted. But
what about Bruno? Bruno seems to be very honourable.
Boys, I've got to shoot. My lad just jumped in the car.
Legend.
Rich, you take care. We'll continue this next week.
Yeah, to be continued. Hopefully, I'll be happier next week.
Let's do. See you later, mate.
Take care, buddy.
I didn't realise how many amazing players Monchi sold at Roma, and his reputation that he left Roma with. Sounds like basically if he ever stepped foot there again, he'd be attacked on the street. Sold Salah, Rudiger, Alisson, all those guys when he was there.
And this is the thing, is that everyone's looking at what he did at Villa and going, "Oh yeah, he was shit." But like, I'm sorry, like I look at that list and I'm saying that list isn't shit. Like the players might not be playing that well right now for various different reasons, but Amadou Onana was heavily linked with Newcastle United, and everyone was excited about the thought of signing him, as were a couple of other teams like Chelsea. Like when they got that deal, everyone was going, "Wow, that's a great deal to get him in." Moussa Diaby, we were banging on about him all of that summer up until he signed for Brighton. We were gutted that he didn't sign for us, and he did okay that season. I think if he'd have stayed, he'd have probably hit on and kicked on another level. But they made money on his sale, and you can see that at the bottom there. Pau Torres was another one that
These
was,
aren't they? I mean, these left. Aston Villa now have the oldest squad in the season in the Premier League, joint with you guys.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
you guys both have the same.
Yeah.
So,
and that was the key, and this is probably what Rich is on about, is because, as Rich just mentioned, that Isak money allows us to be able to go and reinvest in the team. We can go and kick on again in January if we want to, and we can move on a couple of players. We have got a number of players at the end of this season, and a lot of them are older players that are running out with their contracts and could quite easily just leave the club on a free and just move on. Jamal Lascelles being one of them. There's like Kraft, and there's a couple of others. Fabian Shaw's in there as well, but like there's a few that could move on that would naturally bring the age bracket down. Whereas Villa,
it's harder for them.
Players, they can't afford to, because some of those are their main players. Like Watkins, for example, hitting 30, 31. You look at Tyrone Mings. You got Pau Torres, it's approaching 30, if not already. You got Luca Dean, 32, 33. Like, these are all players. I think Matt Cash is around 30.
Matt Cash is getting on. Yeah.
You're looking at all these players. These are starters. These are regular guys. And they've got nobody of any quality to come in. Like, at least Lascelles leaves. We've got Malik Chow, 24, 25 years old. Like, he's Champions League experience. Like, we've added players in. Like, Ramsdale, for example. If Pope at 33, 34 does leave next summer on a free contract, whatever it is, the Ramsdale's 28. Like, we brought down that age bracket. That's if we decide to keep him. So he is right. Like, we're doing it differently, but they are in a difficult position, Villa. They really are. And I think it all goes back to January, boys. We talked about it. We said it to Rich, said it to Billy as well. They went all or nothing. In that Champions League, they went all or nothing, and they're having to bite the bullet because of it. But
and it's mad, Pete. You just listed those players. You've essentially named their back four. Then you've got Emi Martinez. So you said Luca Dean, you said Tado Mings, you said Matty Cash, and who was the other centre back? Pau Torres. Then you've got Emi Martinez, who's the number one normally. Then you've got the main striker, which is Ollie Watkins.
How old's Martinez? Martinez now
33.
Yeah, I mean, I know goalies have got a bit of time, haven't they? But even so,
he's been living off of 2 saves for quite a long time. That goalkeeper,
still living off the World
Definitely
Cup.
not the Brighton model. Anyway,
yeah, no, it's it really isn't.
Well, it was really interesting, actually, Adam, because we were talking about the model, and Rich was talking about the model of Emery doesn't want to keep buying those young players and having to develop them. He wanted the here and now. It was kind of that conversation around Lucas Paqueta. What? And I started thinking about Brighton in your situation, because you've been doing that for quite a while now. You've been buying young players, developing them, and then kind of kicking them on, maybe selling them for profit. Like, do you think Brighton is sort of going to change that in any way, shape, or form? Do you think that's just going to be their model now moving forward, or do you think it's going to change? Because I almost feel, and correct me if I'm wrong and give me a different opinion, I almost feel like if you want to kick on to that next level, you might need to buy 1 or 2 established, already ready to go players to kind of kick that on. But is that something that you see and envisage like changing in any way?
Yeah, we talked about this not that long ago, and I think one of the big things about the way Brighton do transfers that's important and different from maybe how Villa do it is, while the manager does have input, the squad and the purchases are not done by the manager. And that's why there was a big falling out with Roberto De Zerbi. Not only is he insane, but he was like, I want this guy, I want this guy, I want this guy. And a few of those people did come in. And for the most part, they all flopped. And the club is the group that runs the club are the ones that define the transfers. They get the manager's blessing, but the manager's not ultimately deciding. So that's a big difference as to why the model sort of works. The club doesn't buy players typically for the manager. The club buys players for the club and the team. They sign a manager based on how they want the team to play. So it all fits in nicely like that. It's the opposite of like the Man United model, right? Where like manager comes in, here's how I want to play, buy me the players for that model, and it just breaks over and over and over and over again. Yeah. So that's what Brighton don't do. I think when it comes to switching up from this policy of signing young players and selling them on and then bringing in maybe more mature players that are more established, you start to see a bit of that. So like Olivier Boscagli was signed from PSV. He's in his sort of mid to late 20s as a more established player. We've got some of the old guard, right? The transfer model split a little bit. The ones that are young and do really well are obviously the ones that get all the plaudits. But I think people sometimes forget about some of the older people that are in the team that are established and do well. And you sign those veteran players, which you know in Danny Welbeck and your James Milners and people like that. And then you bring in the youngsters and you spatter in a few slightly more established players that are in their mid-20s. And that's how you get to a position, I suppose, where the club is in as someone said in the chat, like a really healthy situation when it comes to PSR and the finances, because as it stands, that model works. If the club has aspirations higher than where we are now, will that need to change? Potentially, but at the same time, how much risk do you take there? Because if that goes wrong for 1 or 2 seasons, like you see maybe with a Villa, then you've cut off your supply chain. You've cut off all your money makers that you bring in and then sell on for 1 or 2 seasons. And you've just got the burden of these more established players that earn more money. So it's a really expensive risk to take. So it remains to be seen. If Brighton can establish themselves a little bit further up the table, ongoing, then they will need to change it a little bit, but I don't think the foundation will go away.
Go on, Daz. Go on.
No, just as well as I just remember from our conversations with Kieran Maguire, he's fairly content as well that the Brighton follow the model that they do, and that like it works. Yes, they have to sell their superstar, but then they bring in another batch of young talent. But they get into Europe every now and again as well. It's just like he compares it back to the days gone by, let's say, and he's just absolutely delighted to be in the Premier League and in that touching distance of Europe. He kind of knows his place, I guess. That kind of an attitude towards. I know Wolfie's had a few goals at you before, Adam, where at Brighton. They'll never achieve that. They'll never do this. They'll never have their 2 stars like Nottingham Forest, whatever. But no, it works for Brighton, and they're an exciting team to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to what their expectations are and what the expectations are for the club. So the club does have a sort of a 2030 target to be an established, consistent, ongoing top 10 Premier League team indefinitely. And that obviously involves Europe on a more regular basis than not. Like, that's the aspiration of the club. But they're under no illusions that they were going to get there in a different way. There are so many examples of clubs trying to go fully into thinking they are above their station, if you want to put it that way. I mean, I look at a club like West Ham, right? West Ham think that they belong in the sort of European positions on a regular basis. And what happens? They screw it up, and then they end up towards the bottom of the table. The fan base is unhappy. They churn through managers. They might get relegated from time to time, which isn't completely out of, West Ham's past. And that's just not the risk that Bloom and the club want to take, because they know the value of being in the Premier League. So while you're not necessarily going to be going on that sort of run where Brighton fans are going, oh, we're going to be a top 3 team in no time, we know that's not going to happen. Like, you guys are in a different position historically and also ownership wise. That's not Brighton are not a poor club, but we're not owned by a nation state or whatever it is. So we know where we can get to, and we know where the floor needs to be. And that's the important part. This is the club that has a floor as opposed to thinking about where the ceiling is.
Mm-hmm. So with that floor then, moving on to the game on Saturday, did you expect more from that game? Are you frustrated that you allowed Tottenham back in? Because I know Dad's watched that game. I watched it as well. I thought the long parts of that game, particularly in the first half, I thought you were very good and definitely the better team. But yeah, how did you see that one? Were you frustrated, or were you kind of Tottenham take the point, move on? Like where were you at?
Yeah, I was, and I've got to jump here in 2 minutes. I'm running late, so I apologise. And I was in England for the weekend for a wedding, and I nearly went to the game, and I couldn't end up making it. I'm sort of glad I didn't, to be honest with you, because the way in which it sort of ended up, we've been, even through the first few games of this season, we've been consistent with how we were last season, in which last season we were the best team in the league at getting points from coming from a losing position, and one of the worst teams at holding on to leads and keeping your points when you're winning games. And there's something that happens with this club where if we get 1 or 2 goals ahead, as Brighton fans, we know that they're going to screw it up somehow. We don't know exactly how it's going to work, but we know we're going to mess it up. And that's basically, I mean, the goals that Spurs scored were really scrappy. Like, horrible little pinball goal, Van Hecker own goal. It wasn't the way you want it to go, but there was an inevitability about it. So yeah, it was frustrating, because one thing I will say as well, Minte took a step over the summer. He took a bit of a leap, and he's turned into, you won't want to hear it obviously, but he's turned into a really, really good player, like one of our most consistent performers, and a guy who you just constantly want the ball to go to. Even more so than Matoma this season so far. And it's frustrating when you do that and you score a couple of good goals and you get ahead. Ayari's goal was really good, even though the goalkeeping was shocking. Like, we should have walked away with 3 points from that game, especially when you're at home, and especially with some of the results we've had so far this season. So,
well, look, we will continue to keep an eye on Brighton, of course, as we go along. And look, I know you're really busy at the moment, so it's always great and a pleasure to have you on when you can make it, mate. But I'll let
appreciate
you know. Score prediction tonight, Barnsley.
Oh yeah, I mean, we've not got long until kickoff. I mean, I've looked at our lineup. I don't know if I love the lineup, and I don't know how they're going to play, because we've not played these players in these positions before. So I still think we should beat them 3-0. We'll probably get a win from this. I'd be surprised if we didn't. And I will say one thing. I don't mean to cut you off, but Claire put, I'd be frustrated being a Brighton fan. You bring in all these people for other clubs to get, I want to be entertained on the pitch and then have a healthy profit. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. you can still get, especially with younger players playing really good football, signing players that you have no expectations of that come in and set the world on fire. Those are still things you still get a massive amount of enjoyment watching the club. And that is the mantra of the ownership. Bring in managers that play a certain way, a certain style of football, but at the same time you make a profit. So I'd say it's both of those things. It's not one or the other. But anyway, I've got to run. Guys, pleasure as always. Thank you.
Top man.
Cheers, Adam.
Cheers, Adam.
Great to have Adam. Sorry, Daz. I was just going to say, I think he makes a good point, and obviously Claire made that point with regards to Brighton. I think we're lucky. We are. Sometimes we don't feel like we are, but we are lucky in one sense. Particularly looking at some of these other teams that we have aspirations to have it all. We want the attacking football. We want to keep all of our best players. We want to develop young talent. We want it all, and we're in a position where we've got owners that want it all as well. Equally, it might take time for us to get it all, but we will eventually get there. And sometimes we've just got to remember that other clubs are just very happy with where they are. Like Brighton were with us. Well, the last time we came up from the Championship, they came up with us and have stayed up with us since that. They're living the dream right now. The players that they're attracting and bringing through and selling on, and then bringing new players through. This is the dream for Brighton. It weren't long ago down the spiral. They were in the lower ends of the football league. So they are at different. They are a completely different entity to us. But sorry, Daz, go on.
Yeah, no, I was just going to pretty much the same. But I was going to say, if we had that Brighton model back when Mike Ashley was there, we would have been happy. Okay, we wouldn't have liked to lost a big player, but we get massive profit from it. I know Andy Carroll springs to mind, but we invest that money then and bring young players, like quality of great scouting network, and it would have been exciting. It wouldn't have gone as bad as it did for him, let's say.
You look at those players, Alexander Lacazette, Aubameyang, just two strikers there that are out there that we were linked with that we didn't get because Mike Ashley didn't pay the money, and they weren't even expensive prices then. And think about the type of money that Aubameyang and Lacazette has gone for since that. That could have been us. We could have had them for a few years. Remy, for example, we got him on loan, but we had him permanently. The deal was done. He got swiped by QPR. If we'd have gone, right, we'll pay you more money, because that's all ultimately he went to QPR for, not because of the club, all due respect to them. It was because Harry Redknapp just offered him more money. If we'd have gone, we'll give you more money, got a couple of years out of him, signed Newcastle, we could have doubled, maybe even tripled our money. I would have been laughing, and that's how we would have built. But we had an absolute clown as an owner back then. So.
You know what? It's funny you boys saying that, because I was thinking about Mike Ashley just when Adam said at the end, and you boys have both touched on it, and it's so true, isn't it? Because how many times, have we said over the years, if only he put his money in, and we weren't even talking about him putting in his own money in terms of out of his own pocket. We just wanted him to invest the money that we were accumulating. So as a club, the money we were bringing in, and I know we made a big deal about when we were relegated, he put his own money in and stuff like that. But even Yohan Cabaye, prime example, we sold Yohan Cabaye, and it was almost as if, we don't know the facts and the figures, but it was almost as if he was like, they are, here's 5 million, go and replace him. And you're like, but that's not going to work. If he'd invested the money and just slowly built us, we'd have probably got used to the fact that, we've got to sell some players and then move on. And I know I always harp on about it, but it's only because of obviously where I live and who I know. But Liverpool fans have been saying this to me for years. The fact that they used to bring players in and sell them, and they didn't want to sell them. But it's almost those building blocks. And we are very fortunate, you boys are right, because you look at Brighton, and what I totally agree with what Adam's saying as well, in terms of, rather than looking at the ceiling, they're looking at the floor. And as long as they would be delighted if somebody said to them in the next 5 or 10 years, you will be a top 10 club. You might finish 11th or 12th, but relegation won't even be a concern. That's where they want to be. We're just looking upwards, and we're now talking as fans saying we want top 4 consistently. We want Champions League consistently, and it's just a different space.
Different levels. Yeah. I was going to say something there. Yeah, no. Look, I'll say one last thing on Brighton. Yeah, the reason I was watching that Spurs Brighton game was really just didn't want to say doing a bit of scouting, see who could we poach maybe down the line. And I know Man United are all over Carlos Baleba, but that and Gini Esther put it in the chat there as well. That Yasinari as well looked all right. He's somewhat different. Jeff, they also bring in someone through. Who's the next one they're bringing through? So always a good team to keep an eye on. But yeah.
And just to touch on what we were talking about earlier, with Isaac, we've got to stop saying that name. But Pete, you were saying about you've took your medicine and you're never going to let yourself, be caught up in a player that much like we were with Alexander Isak, because we were all three of us were, and we were adamant he wasn't going anywhere and no way would he leave and stuff like that. And
I wasn't.
It's almost come to a point, isn't it? What did you say, sorry, Dad?
I said I wasn't. It was he.
Hey, as much you boys, I was adamant he wasn't going anywhere, even though he didn't get on that plane, and maybe even deep down, and I knew something was off or something wasn't quite right. I still believed when people came out and said it's 150, or he's going nowhere, and I did think we were going to hang tight for that. But almost what I wanted to say was, it's like, you become connected to players, and that's absolutely fine. But what we've got to remember as well, boys, and this is what kind of made it a little bit sweeter for me, or it helped me move on more, is how Alexander Isak conducted himself. Because make no mistake about it, if Bruno Guimaraes, we get to the end of the season and Barca come in, and say, I'm just making things up now, but Barca come in and offered him 100 million, and Bruno says, I want to leave, I want to go to Barcelona, I'd live with that. I would live with it. Because I think to myself, he wants to better himself. Barca a level above us at the moment, and he probably wants to try himself in La Liga. But it's all about how you do it, and that's what made it so easy for me when Alexander Isak was refusing to train, and it got to the point, and all three of us were like it towards the end, weren't we? It was just like, just get him gone, Don't want him here anymore. And we've almost had the worst experience. We've had the worst experience of somebody leaving. So it's horrible to lose your best player or your most valuable player. But what's this?
So why are you doing this? Why are you doing this tonight? But I'm not surprised.
No.
When you see how good, like, there's all this question mark about his fitness and this, that, and the other. Like, the only way he's really going to get fit is by playing matches. And look, when he's playing the way he's playing right now, like, why wouldn't you be? He's 25 years old. He's an unbelievable centre back. Like, you can't. This is the thing with Newcastle United. You cannot mess around with players of this ability, like, because there's just not players readily available at £32 million of Botman's ability. They're just not. And Newcastle United are good. I'm not going to say Newcastle United. Eddie Howe has got a big decision to make soon, because he can't go into games playing three at the back every week. That's not our setup. Our setup is 4-3-3. Certain games, Champions League, I wouldn't be surprised if he plays it against Arsenal on Sunday. Like, certain games, fine. But we don't play three at the back. That's not how Newcastle United play. He's going to have to make a decision soon. Botman or Burn, right? And Burn's been his guy, and rightly so. And he's pulled him through. He's helped win a trophy. I get that. But Burn is, 34 years old now. He's going to have to make a decision. There's a 9-year age gap between him and Botman, and there's potential for Botman to sign and secure himself at Newcastle United for at least another 3 or 4 years. At some point, Eddie Howe's going to have to make that decision. And if that is the case, and he is hesitating through lack of playing time, and he is playing like he played against Bournemouth, he has got a big decision to make, because it could mean he loses an absolutely top-level talent because he's prioritizing a 34-year-old. And that's not me being disrespectful to Dan Burn. I've been for weeks now. I've said his start of the season has been great. But at some point, you have to change the guard. No matter where they come from or where they're brought up, and however good they are.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's a good point as well.
But lads, this is what I worry about. Who's to say that players like Isak are not on the phone to him saying, hold on another year and you can come to cheap for me at Liverpool with Van Dijk at what, 35, 36 as a left centre back?
Yeah.
Don't think that conversation won't be happening if we hesitate. This is the thing. You secure your player now and you secure him for the next 4 years and ensure that he's playing for Newcastle United when Dan Burn will be 38, for example, back then, at that point in time. Or you dilly-dally on it and you say, oh, earn your place, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
When we know how good he is and you potentially lose him, you have to maybe sell him next summer because he's refusing to sign a contract for absolute pittance, or you're going to lose him on a free and you get an extra year, 18 months out of him. These are difficult moments now that Eddie Howe's going to have to manage. He's going to have to find a way, in my opinion, if we're keeping Sven Botman, he has to find a way for him to start games on a regular basis now. He has to.
And Pete, just to throw the cat amongst the pigeons, who were the only two players to publicly come out and almost, wish Alexander Isak well?
Yeah.
Anthony Gordon, linked with Liverpool.
Yeah.
Liverpool fan, and Sven Botman.
Absolutely.
Watch this space, I guess. Something needs to happen this side of Christmas on that one.
I agree. And Daz, I know you probably do as well, mate. I agree entirely with what Pete's saying, though. There comes a point where sentimentality, and I'll call it sentimentality. I'm not doing Dan Burn a disservice whatsoever. But there comes a time where you've got to start looking into the future. And Dan Burn will know that, he's coming towards the end of his career. And it's nothing against Dan Burn. And Dan Burn's at the peak of his powers at the moment. He's playing in the England side. He's got into the England side. He's now considered an important player for Thomas Tuchel. But Eddie Howe has to look at the bigger picture and go, I've got a fantastic Rolls Royce of a centre-back here. And I need to put him in this team. Now, I either put him in a back three or back five, which I don't really want to do, or I'm going to have to put him in the starting 11. And that means Dan Burn's missing out. Because let's be honest, boys, and this is maybe where the squad management or, the careful consideration of the manager comes in. Let's be honest. If Dan Burn isn't getting regular football at Newcastle United, and by that I mean 90 minutes every single week, is Dan Burn going to kick up a fuss? Is Dan Burn going to be asking to leave and handing transfer requests in? He's not. He won't, because Dan Burn is happy. He's in his hometown club. He knows he's in the twilight of his career. He knows Eddie Howe's backing him. Behind the scenes, Eddie Howe's probably going, listen, I want to keep you here for the next 2 years, but you can't play as much football. How he communicates that to Dan Burn, I don't know, because it might be a case of where he's like, you know what, I can't play it every week. You're getting on now. We want to look after you. We want you to stay at the club as long as possible. But in his mind, he's thinking, I need Sven Botman to play. Sven Botman needs to be in the starting 11, and I can't keep picking Dan Burn over him because, as you say, Pete, it will get too far down the line, and Sven Botman will go, I'm not getting a game.
Yeah, this needs to be done now before the turn of the year. Sven Botman, someone's put in there, Livramento as well. They need to secure their future at Newcastle United. I'll put Sandro Tonali in there. Those 3 contracts have to be signed by the time 2026 turns around. It has to be done. It has to be done, because if we don't, it's almost negligence that the club is sort of doing to themselves, because they're not securing their top players and their players' contracts are running down. You cannot get now to under 2 years, 18 months, whatever it is, to secure a player now. You've got to be doing it in advance, which is why it goes back to the whole point. We'd have had Isak still playing for us had Paul Mitchell just agreed to him signing a contract. Like, we go back to that conversation. You've got to keep players ticking over. Like, it's almost like every couple of years, even on a 5-year deal, every couple of years you top it up by a year, or you top it up by a couple of years, and you keep topping it up. You might change the details within the contract, but you keep topping it up so it never runs down to a point where the club is then in a difficult position. Now, we're coming into this summer with Nick Pope, with Sven Botman. Nick Pope's contract's out, so that's even more of a difficult position, because we could be losing our number 1 goalkeeper anyway by January. You've got Sven Botman, and I think there's a couple of others that are running down their contracts into that 2-year period.
Fabian Shaw is another one.
Fabian Shaw's contract out in the summer. I think Bruno's down to 2 years in the summer.
Oh, sorry, you were talking 2 years, mate. Yeah, there's a few on 2 years, mate. There is.
So we're in a difficult position for certain players, and yeah.
Can I go devil's advocate here for a second? But
yeah, go on, mate.
You're Dan Byrne. You're coming towards the end of your career. The World Cup is in a few months' time. You want to be in that squad, so he's not going to give up a position too easily as well. And like, if you think about for him, the last thing apart from winning something else with Newcastle, the last thing to tick off his list is to play in a World Cup, maybe win a World Cup, but to play in a World Cup. So it's going to be, and there's a good point there that came up on screen a second ago. Is that why Eddie? One of the reasons why Eddie's playing with 3 centre backs.
Yeah, it's a good. Do you know what, Dad? It's a great point. It's a great point, and this is the problem, isn't it, boys? This is the problem when you are trying to build an elite squad. This is the problem. There's always going to be players left out, and there's always going to be players who are unhappy, because you can't have a squad of 20, 25 players and keep them all happy, unless, of course, you're Chelsea and you pay them ridiculous amounts of wages and they're not bothered about playing football, but they're not the type of players that you want in your team. But yeah, this is the difficulty, because, and I suppose it's up to Eddie to work out. It's up to him to work out whether going forward, is it a formation change? Is it a 3 at the back and just making it work? Or is it him saying to Dan Byrne, taking him to one side and going, listen, I know it's a World Cup year. I know you really want you want your World Cup place, and saying to him, you get all the cup games, you play, and then saying to Sven Botman, we need to keep you just right. We've got you for the Champions League, we've got you for the Premier League, but in the cup games, you're not playing. We need to keep you safe, keep you sorted. And this is the problem of a manager, isn't it? You've got to juggle, because you've got to manage both expectations. And you've got to try and fit everyone. And then you've got Malik Chow. Malik Chow's probably itching to play, and he's come in and he's done a decent job. And yeah, and you've got Fabian Shaw who's thinking, well, I'm still doing the business. I'm still performing.
Mentions Sven Botman. Sven Botman with Holland will want to go to the World Cup.
Yeah, he wants that call up.
He will come back to Eddie Howe with that argument to say, okay, you're prioritizing Dan Byrne with England, but I want to go with Holland, and Malik Chow will be going, I want to go with Germany. Like, I want to go and play. Like, and let's be honest, all 3 of those countries, those centre-back positions are all up for grabs. They're all up for grabs. Like, Germany's defence ain't great, as we watched over the international break. He's definitely got an opportunity to get into that one. For Holland, they're not the best defensively. I know they've got good players, but defensively they're not great. And then England's centre-back situation needs a complete overhaul, and that's why Dan Byrne's in that conversation. I think you can get through by playing both Dan Byrne and Botman in certain games. They don't have to play every game. They'll play some games together when we play through at the back, but I think you can rotate and allow them to play enough games. But Botman needs to play more than he has been playing. But now he looks like he's properly fit. I think he will. I think he'll play tomorrow. I think he may well play on Sunday in a back 3. And I think he may well even go and play again in Belgium in the Champions League. I think we might see a run of games now where Sven Botman plays, because as was put in the chat, so I can't remember who said it, but if someone said if Botman is fit, Botman has to play, and I agree. I just agree.
This one,
it's quality. Yeah, from Scott. Yeah, I think if he's fit, he has to play. It's as simple as that, because you can see his quality is it's unrivaled in our.
Well, we have a game tomorrow. Do either of them want to play in it?
Yeah.
I think Botman plays. I think Botman starts. I think Byrne will get his rest and Botman will play. But yeah, we'll wait and see on that one. But lads, should we wrap just as the games are about to kick off?
Yeah, let's wrap. Let's wrap it. Kind of a different top table talk tonight. As someone said, we need to rename the show. Maybe not in the top table talk. It was interesting, like a good in-depth discussion on Villa and Brighton, and of course then touching into Newcastle. So not so bad. We will see you on the next one, whatever the next one will be. Stay tuned. Stay locked and loaded. Have those notifications on. We'll see you later.
Take care.
Good night.
All night, get you wide up beside and tell me side to side. You can say, JC, you're too much for me. I am a little bit of loneliness, a little bit of disregard. Handful of complaints, but I can't help the fact that everyone can see these scars. I am what I want you to want, what I want you to feel. And it's like no matter what I do, I can't convince you to just believe this is real. So let it go, watching you turn your back, you always do. Face away and pretend that I'm not